word to wise, grass only greener when it's fertilized. Gave them truth in these songs, they prefer to lies. Destiny beautiful, adrift in her purple lies. You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's your boy Ernie, the Blerd Without Fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, so today's video, we are going to be diving into 3 particular X-Men titles, and I know some people have asked me why I haven't talked about Magic or Psylocke or the Lara Kinney Wolverine series. I'll get to those at some point. Right now, I would have to play a little bit of catch up with some of those to really get into it. I know there was a new issue of Magic that came out this week, but right now, we're just gonna focus on Exceptional X-Men number 10, Phoenix number 12, and Giant Size Dark Phoenix Saga number 1. Let's start off with Exceptional X-Men number 10. With this one, when last we left off, Emma Frost had seemingly sacrificed herself, or at least I don't think she realized she was sacrificing herself at the time. This issue, she kind of seems to be of that belief that she was intentionally sacrificing herself. But at the time, it seemed like it was more of a side effect of what she had done. Whatever the case is, she used the last bit of her psychic power along with a piece of Axo's energy in order to psychically strike down Sinister. And while that seemed to have worked, she passed out afterward, and we discover by the time we get to the beginning of this issue, her vitals are low, she is seemingly dying, and right now, she is trapped inside the mind of Mr. Sinister. Now, while all this is going on, Emma gets to reflect a little on her life's choices, why she strives to usher along the next generation of mutants so much, and who really inspired her to be better. The answers are answers we've gotten before, so they won't be particularly surprising, but it's how they're delivered as friendly reminders that I think makes them necessary, especially in an era where many X-Men fans refuse to give Emma Frost a fair chance at redemption, despite being so eager to give it to ex-villains who have done far worse than Emma Frost. Magneto being one of them. Emma has been on the path to being a good guy since the mid-90s, following the death of the original Hellions. And while yes, there were bumps in the road along the way and supposed backslides, she traveled a path not that dissimilar from Magneto, who also didn't turn babyface overnight. He stumbled and regressed multiple times. But here, we're given a slight bit more context that Kitty Pryde was instrumental in Emma beginning to change her ways since their first encounter in 1979's Uncanny X-Men number 129. This made them intrinsically linked to one another, not just because the meeting was so harrowing for Kitty, but because it was also both of their first appearances. And ever since then, they've always been in each other's way for better or worse, until time came that they would serve on the X-Men together. But as for the rest of it, Emma is not going to die alone in Sinister's mind, because Sinister is also still active within his own psyche, and it's up to Axo to get Emma back. Now, the thing that I had posited in the previous issues that, as we have seen with some of the other Exceptional X-Men characters, each of them has slowly been gaining more confidence in their mutant abilities and learning new tricks to their mutant abilities, in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And I figured Axo was about due for his, and that is exactly the case. And I'm really interested to see what Eve is going to be able to do with Axo and this power going forward. While trapped in Sinister's mind, Nathaniel, a childlike version of Sinister, is trying to make both Axo and Emma be his friends. But Axo, being a mutant who is effectively a living mood ring, can see to the heart of what Sinister is really dealing with. And it's easily probably one of the hugest and most deadly epidemics that has stricken many a man in this day and age. Andrew Tate. No, seriously, it's loneliness. Loneliness is why people flock to idiots like Andrew Tate, but neither here nor there. His lack of empathy, his disregard for human life and the safety of others, and his bitterness and narcissism all stem from it. And Axo manages to not only get Sinister to confess all this, but also manages to control Sinister, using his emotions against him, and basically use one of what I think is one of those broken spells in Dungeons and Dragons history, power word sleep. Commanding him to sleep, basically using his words to make Sinister go to sleep. And Sinister actually does. He actually falls comatose, which is pretty impressive considering that while Sinister is a telepath himself, it shouldn't surprise you that he is highly resistant to telepathic manipulation as well. And if you think Axo could only do this little trick of his because he was hooked up to Sinister's channeling device, he does it even once disconnected from it. Back in the real world, he commands Sinister's saber-tooth hounds, monstrous wolves made from Sabretooth's own DNA, and he forces all of them to retreat simply by using his words alone. He even gets one of them to hang around and become what might possibly be one of the team's mascots, but we'll talk about that more here in just a minute, because there's another character that shows up that we gotta address for any mascot business gets addressed. But getting back to it, I'm very curious to know what could happen if Axo further studies his ability to control people using his words, manipulating their emotions. This could easily, as Emma even posited when she first encountered Axo, this could easily make him a powerful, well, yes, he's not strictly a telepath, he's an empath, but this could potentially make him a very dangerous empath. The question I have is that he now knows how to make people power word sleep, power word fear. I wonder if he if pushed, would he be able to use power word kill? That would officially make him tournament ban, in my opinion. But the real kicker is in the fallout of escaping Sinister's mind, he wakes up, and the exceptional X-Men, while they're already a team, it's here in this moment Sinister officially makes them all the team they were meant to be, with the team fully working together as one unit. Kitty, Emma, Iceman, Bronze, Melee, and Axo collectively and for the first time really acting as one, because this has not happened yet. We've seen them fight, but this entire makeup of the team, this is the first time they are actively doing team shit. And together, their powers combined, they utterly obliterate Sinister into what is seemingly just goo. The same goo that the clone of Axo had turned into in the previous issue. Which begs the question, was that even really Sinister? Or is it because Sinister has manipulated his genetic structure so much that this is what happens when he gets killed? I mean, honestly, I think it's probably more likely that this is a clone. We know how much Sinister loves his clones, something that actually got addressed in the Krakoan era and was even kind of pared down to the point where there was only just the one Sinister eventually by the time we got to the end of the Krakoan era. But who's to say he didn't start making clones again? He's already making clones of other people. Why wouldn't he make clones of himself? Now, I mentioned earlier about mascots. The reason I said that is because we find out there's another character that Sinister had locked away in his little secret basement. And it's none other than Lockheed, one of Kitty's oldest and dearest friends. And while I do find it interesting that Lockheed was captured by Sinister, I wonder if there was something done to Lockheed while he was captured. I mean, clearly Sinister knew he was going to be messing with Kitty Pryde, so yeah, why would he not do anything to Lockheed? Is this even the actual Lockheed? Is this a clone of Lockheed? It's difficult to say what's going on here, but whatever happens next, we know that Eve is going to be having the exceptional X-Men meet up with one of her old characters that she used to write, and that's Ironheart, just in time for Marvel's Ironheart Disney Plus series coming out later this month. Speaking of Ironheart, there's something that I'm actually going to be doing that I normally don't do, and that's a watch party. That's right, Ironheart's going to be debuting on Disney Plus June 24th. Well, June 25th, I, as well as Jamie of Black Girl Nerds and Megan of the Vigilante Vibes podcast, we're going to be teaming up, actually going to have like a little crossover deal going on, and right here on the channel, we are going to be doing a watch party for the 3-episode premiere. I'll try to remember to have a link to it. It's actually already scheduled. You can go run over there and make sure you get the notifications, or you can just subscribe to the channel and make sure you hit that notification bell. That way you don't miss out on anything. So that way, when the live stream happens, you'll know about it. But you can also find the live stream on my main page of this YouTube channel. So, however you're going to do it, go do that. But yeah, it's going to be great fun. Jamie and Megan are both really cool people. We are kind of collectively the people who led the charge to make sure people even knew that Ironheart was happening, because Disney was not trying to advertise that shit. So make sure you show up, because like I said, the work's not done yet. We're going to watch the first 3 episodes live on the channel. I will not be showing the episodes, so you're going to have to watch along with us. Look, I'm the Blerd Without Fear. I'm not the Blerd Without Intelligence. We won't be able to show you what we're watching, but we will be able to watch along with us. There you go. Anyway, back to the video. And with that, we're going to talk about Phoenix number 12. So this one, the last time we talked about Phoenix, we saw the return of Sarah Gray, a character who has been dead since 1994 in the Phalanx Covenant story arc, specifically in issue X-Men Volume 2, number 36. We saw that she was dead. She was killed off panel, and we didn't really know the circumstances surrounding how she died. It was always something that was just talked about, but never actually shown. That's kind of one of those things. It's always my least favorite part of comics, is when like major stuff happens to characters and the comic is not showing its work. It's like, nope, just take our word for it. That's it. I actually like that Stephanie Phillips is tackling this, because it's something that, well, I don't think it's like the most shocking, earth-shattering thing in the world to see how Sarah died in the comics. It is something that's nice to know, considering that she's back, and it does give a lot of context for maybe why we should or should not trust this Sarah Gray, if that is even her real name. It gives us a lot of context for why we should, and I'm going to dig into some of that. Basically, what you need to know is that in this issue, we get to see it all play out. She's back, and seemingly she is a mutant, able to activate the hidden potential in any being that she touches, which for humans makes sense. All humans are born with an X gene. Many just never activate, and even aliens oftentimes have X genes, and whether they activate or not is another story altogether, but there are instances of aliens who are mutants. And while we, as I said earlier, already know the circumstances surrounding how Sarah Gray died, Stephanie takes us a step further, showing us the actual events firsthand, how Sarah was speaking out on live television against the Purifiers, an anti-mutant hate group that at the time was spearheaded by Cameron Hodge, one of the X-Men's most deranged mutant-hating villains. A guy that crashed out so hard that he, and here, let me check my notes here for a second. That he threw in his lot with a techno-organic life form whose only goal is to increase his intelligence by consuming all life and civilization in existence. Yep, that'll learn those silly muties for trying to be shit. The leopards totally will not eat my face in this situation.
I never thought the leopards would eat face.
He probably said. To be fair, he was always a bigot. He didn't become one overnight. He hated Warren Worthington III, aka Angel, and was jealous of him so much that when they were roomies in college, that his hatred for Angel festered into hatred for all mutants once he realized that Angel was one. And while the Phalanx Covenant backfired against Cameron spectacularly, as things like that usually do, he did manage to kidnap and sacrifice Sarah Gray to the Phalanx before it was all said and done. But if she was to be sacrificed to the Phalanx, as we clearly saw in X-Men Volume 2, number 36, how the hell is she still alive today? That's an interesting question that doesn't really have an answer. But I think I might know why. We saw that as the Phalanx was consuming her mind, she tried to hide the secret of Jean Grey from it. But apparently at the time, Sarah didn't know Jean was already dead, and the Phalanx put her own game to that. Which is interesting when you consider the fact that at the time that issue came out, Jean was not dead. She was very much alive. She didn't die until about roughly several years later in 2003's New X-Men number 150. But considering how Marvel works on a sliding timescale, it probably was more like a year later in continuity, maybe even a handful of months. So now the question is Sarah Gray lying, or did the Phalanx lie? And I'm pretty sure it's obvious that the answer is both. The Phalanx lied to Sarah about Jean's fate, and it's highly likely the woman who stands before Jean right now, claiming to be her sister, is not that at all. She was consumed, taken over, and assimilated, and she survived a spaceship crash later after having supposedly been dead without a scratch. Even with her late-stage activation of her mutant power, that seems incredibly unlikely. What this might be is the Phalanx breaking off, becoming a separate whole, and assuming her guise. Or maybe they became one true entity. Part of me wonders if this is one of those Cypher Warlock situations. For those who may or may not remember, during the New Mutant series, Cypher, a human mutant, and Warlock, a mutant technarch, and by mutant, kind of going back to something I said earlier, that there are aliens that can be mutants, but not necessarily in the X-gene way. Well, this is one of those situations. Warlock is a mutant, not because he has an X-gene, but because he is basically anomalous compared to the rest of his species. Now, Warlock is not exactly Phalanx, he's a technarch, but technarchs are created by Phalanx. They're an artificial intelligence that were spawned off from them. And in this particular instance, I wonder if we're getting something very similar to what happened to those characters. This was something that happened in the 1986 New Mutant series, specifically New Mutants Annual number 2, where it was discovered that Cypher and Warlock could make what was effectively referred to as a Gestalt form, a form where they both mentally and physically merged into one being, and being able to basically take advantage of both of their strengths together as one form. Part of me wonders if this is something very similar, but just considering the nature of things, I'm almost willing to lean more sinister with this, that maybe this is less Sarah Gray being in control and more the Phalanx having been in control, but a spawn-off from it that is not exactly part of the main whole. That's my best guess. But whatever the case is, yeah, Cable ain't having it, and he literally lays her down the moment he walks in the door. He doesn't even say anything before he actually lays her down, which I thought was pretty damn impressive. And we know this is going to drive a wedge between Cable and Jean, which, I mean, to be fair, they don't really have much of one anymore. I mean, yeah, there is the whole thing where there was once upon a time where Cable, didn't really care for Jean trying to pretend to be his mom, but that was basically one of those things that was kind of more of a defense mechanism than anything else. They've kind of gotten over that shit over the decades. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that Jean feels like she is going to have to pull the belt out on Cable in this, but at the end of the day, I think that, based on what we have seen, that was teased in the previous issue, Cable is probably about to catch it. We'll just kind of have to wait and see how all that plays out. We know at the very least his arm's getting ripped off, but how that will all play out is going to be something to keep an eye on, considering what his arm, his metal arm, is. It is the techno-organic virus, or a version of it. So, yeah, I'm thinking Phalanx shenanigans are going to be large and in charge here. Considering that's how Sarah Gray ended, it would make sense. Real quick, if you're still here at this point in the video, clearly you must be enjoying what you're watching. So hey, do me a favor, hit that like button, because it helps me out, helps me find more viewers like yourself, and this is a two-way street. You also get to find more videos just like these. Even if they're not mine, you will get to find more content. If you love stuff like this, you're gonna get a lot more of it. So yeah, let's help each other out here, and let's get into the final issue that we're gonna be talking about. Giant Size X-Men, The Dark Phoenix Saga #1. So Ms. Marvel has been traveling through time since the previous installment of this arc, which was Giant Size X-Men #1. Now, that was taking her back to the original 1975 Giant Size X-Men #1, and basically inserting herself into the proceedings of the X-Men, or rather the all-new, all-different X-Men, trying to save the original Recipe X-Men from Krakoa. Well, as we saw with what's going to be happening with the series, the mission statement here is that everything that is happening here, that Kamala Khan is doing, that Legion is doing, all of it is going to change the history of the X-Men going forward. In some significant ways, and maybe in some less significant ways. And what other story arc could you potentially do that could really change X-Men's history if it ain't the Dark Phoenix? And that's what's happening here. We already got a taste of this in Marvel's Time Slide from last year, which was kind of a look ahead and things to come. We actually get to see literally one of the opening moments of this issue in that one shot. So here we're looking more at Kamala Khan, and now that she's jumped ahead in time, mind you, everything that she did in Giant Size X-Men #1 still holds, because Cyclops even talked about how, like, oh, hey, you're back. And, you know, it's like, well, for Kamala, it's only been a handful of minutes. For Cyclops, it's actually been a while. And the Dark Phoenix Saga, easily one of the classic Marvel story arcs, a comic so iconic that it cannot be replicated on the silver screen. It's being changed, but in all of this, is it for the better is, I think, the real question. We learn what happens when the Phoenix Force, an eternal entity, able to live and die and live again, always more powerful the next time we see it. What happens when it sees that its perfect host, Jean Grey, is no longer perfect? It finds a better one, and that would be Legion, a man with a million minds inside of his one mind, and near infinite number of possibilities, and how much more powerful that makes Legion is scary to think about, and unfortunately, for the X-Men at least, they won't get to think about it for long. But before I get into that, one thing I find incredibly interesting about this whole arc is that the way it does fundamentally change Jean Grey, and that's because with Jean Grey losing the Phoenix Force, she's forced to immediately deal with the weight of killing the broccoli people, all 5 billion of them, during the Dark Phoenix Saga, because at the point that we're at in all this, she's already done that. She's already committed one of the greatest atrocities in Marvel Comics history. And not only does she have to face that weight head on, she also must face off with how the X-Men perceive her now that they have witnessed her as the Dark Phoenix. But it's in facing this now as opposed to later that brings Jean Grey closer to the Jean she is today than she ever could have been back in the day. And while that is instrumental in changing the future, the end result is going to be the same, but for different reasons, because that's kind of the whole thing. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And it's just as true in comics as it is in real life. Now, because Legion can't get his original self back from the White Hot Room, the one thing he truly wanted, he's taking his fight back to Kamala on Earth, because if she dies, he gets what he wants, or at least that's what he thinks. And the Shi'ar, same as before, get involved because of the unholy reign of terror that he's waging across the cosmos in an effort to get back to Earth. It leads to a pretty cool encounter with the Shi'ar Imperial Guard, but this time it's not the X-Men fighting the Shi'ar Imperial Guard for the fate of Jean Grey. it's the X-Men and the Imperial Guard working together against a Phoenix Force empowered Legion for the fate of the universe. But that said, Legion runs roughshod over both the X-Men and the Shi'ar Imperial Guard, killing some, seemingly unmaking others, supposedly, and traumatizing whoever is left. And as far as we know, the only people left alive besides Jean and Kamala are likely Cyclops and maybe Wolverine. In any case, they're not going to be of any use to Kamala or Jean in fighting back against Legion. The real kicker here is that Jean is able to put Kamala in the exact right place and the exact right time, activating Kamala's mutant power. This time, not by accident, but with intention, allowing Ms. Marvel to truly be a mutant and, at this point, finally have that parity with the MCU, showcasing her hard-light construct abilities while still seemingly maintaining her inhuman power. We don't really see it in its full glory like we did in the previous issue, but it does seem to at least some level when she first activates the power, she still has the whole big hand deal, but without seeing a smaller hand inside of it. Once again, artistic license is a thing, but we don't really get to see her use the power all that much in this issue, but what she does do with it is pretty effective, and she uses those hard light abilities to encase Legion inside of what is effectively a hard light egg. And while it does hold Legion in place, it holds the Phoenix Force only long enough for it to realize the error of its ways. And this forces the Phoenix to leave Legion and seek Jean once more. And while Legion is trapped, the same cannon that was used to destroy Jean and the Phoenix in the finale of the Dark Phoenix saga is used once again. Not to destroy Legion, but Jean, same as before, because while she now has more control over the Phoenix Force, effectively gaining the level of control that she would later have, down the stretch, she gains that now so much earlier, she's able to hold the Phoenix Force long enough for the shot to go off and destroy them both. But this time around, it's still a little bit of a tearjerker, just for different reasons. This time, Cyclops isn't there to hold Jean and cry out for her as she's blasted by the cannon, but Kamala is there to see Jean off, who sacrifices herself with a face proud of her choices and no longer burdened by the grief that always saddled her when she was resurrected. But because the Dark Phoenix saga has been rewritten in this way, it's time for both Legion and Kamala to move on to the next thing. But while Legion believes he's bringing Kamala back to his future so that he can properly dispose of her there and then get back to brass tacks, he's actually taken them both to the wrong future. The age of Apocalypse. And now we might get a taste of what they may have to do to get out of this situation, because they might just have to work together. Not necessarily because they want to, they may be forced to, because the moment that they have arrived in at the Age of Apocalypse is not in its early days. They've arrived, similarly to the Dark Phoenix saga, at a point near the story's end. Apocalypse is already ruled, and the destruction of the Age of Apocalypse is already on the verge of kicking off. So this means that both Legion and Kamala are going to have to race against the clock to effectively try to save themselves, or at least their individual selves, from being destroyed in the rain of hellfire that's about to hit them. The thing I'm actually more curious about, though, is what state were the X-Men left in, because after everything that happens with the X-Men during the Dark Phoenix Saga one-shot, it is kind of nebulous, what has happened to some of these characters. Like, we see at various points that, Wolverine, he has clearly been burned in half, most of his body, most of the flesh on his body have been burned off, but we know he has a healing factor, so we know he's going to come back from that. We see that Nightcrawler is buried in rubble, seemingly unconscious, could be dead, we don't really know. We see that Warren gets his wings burned off, effectively putting him in a similar position as to what he was during the X Factor days, so there's that. We see Colossus get completely unraveled, his metal skin literally coming apart at the seams. Storm seems to be getting a force feedback of the very energy and elements that she controls, and Cyclops is all beat up, cut up, and bruised, and doesn't even seem to be able to walk. He's only able to crawl. So we don't know what state these X-Men are going to be in by the time we get to Age of Apocalypse. And where are they all going to be? Are they going to be in similar positions as what they were before? Is this going to lead to some change in how the Age of Apocalypse gets kicked off? Because we have to remember that Legion is responsible for the Age of Apocalypse, having killed Charles Xavier by mistake when he meant to kill Magneto. Like I said, there's a lot of questions that have to be answered for this, and I'm actually pretty curious to see where those go. As for the backup story, I might actually do a separate video for that one, because it's not really anything to write home about, at least in terms of what's going on in connection with this. But I do find something very interesting in that backup story that, yeah, I do think is worth talking about on some level, but we'll get to that when we get there. Anyway, thank you all so much for taking time to watch this video, engage with this video, and yeah, if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel, hitting that notification bell. Like I said, I've said this a lot, but hey, I watch YouTube videos too, and sometimes I've caught myself following channels for months, sometimes in certain cases even a year or more, and forgetting to hit the subscribe button. Like, I'm always watching the content, but sometimes like, oh yeah, I'm not subscribed to this shit. So yeah, and I know for a fact that there's at least 38.1% of you who aren't subscribed. So yeah, consider hitting that button. And also, if you're still here by now and you haven't hit that like button, hey, help a brother out, man. If you're still here by this point, the video's end, and you haven't clicked the like button, come on, man. Come on. Thank you all so much, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.